In this video, I'll show you how we gained our very first clients for an AI service-based business. I know there are loads of videos out there about the best ways to get AI clients, but all of these are from big creators, people which have large audiences, and therefore loads and loads of people will be replicating their exact approaches. When that happens, the space becomes oversaturated, people are doing the same things, and this is how you stand out if you're just starting out your journey. Now, I know this for personal experience, as this is exactly what we did to gain our first few clients. So I'm going to walk you through 3 methods, the last one being the most effective one, but also something I don't see anybody talking about. Now, to start off, I started with something called the event method. Basically, it works very, very well if you're in a big city like I'm in London at the moment. If you're, for example, New York, any other big city, it could be Frankfurt, any city you're in, basically it would work perfectly if it's got an entrepreneurial hub in that space. So then what you'd have to do is go to a site like Perplexity or go to Google and type in this exact prompt. I am in London. Could you please find me the biggest business events in the niche of IT service providers for this month, and I would like it to be free to enter. So you give it a prompt similar to that, and then you'll find all the events where your ideal customer or your niche, if you don't have a niche, then you can go to loads of different events. So for example, there's one on the 28th of August, 12th of August, 14th of August, 28th of August, 29th. So as you can see, there are tons already here. Now you can ask it for more. Basically, once you've found these events, this was allowing us to book around 20 meetings per event. And if we were going to around 3-4 events, we would have meetings for the rest of the month basically booked out. And it also allows you to have a pre-qualifying discussion with them to understand what their business is about, so then you can research it before you get on their call. The event method allows you to find these events, so that's stage 1. Stage 2 is read a bit about the event, see what the ideal demographic is, learn a little bit about what their pain points may be. Normally the layout of these events are companies who hire out stalls to show off what their capabilities are, etc. So there are 2 types of people you can approach at this event. People in the stalls, people who are walking around. Now the people in this are really simple because you've got a really easy way of approaching them. You can just ask them the question. I'm always just curious, what do you do? And then they go into their little sales pitch trying to sell their company to you. Then you come from the perspective of asking more questions. So what exactly does this do? And this allows you to understand their industry really well or understand their product. Then you start asking questions specifically related to what their pain points are. And as I mentioned in the previous video, that's the best way to sell something on an AI service if it directly correlates to one of their biggest pain points. Now this will be the next big question. What would you say is your biggest pain point? You could either word it like that or say, what's the challenge you're facing there? I know you mentioned XYZ. What's the challenge you face there? Try to see what their biggest pain points are. And the more people you start speaking to, you'll start uncovering different pain points. And this is the perfect time to know you're in the right niche for an AI product or service. But if you've already done that work before, now I'm talking about how to sell or gain clients, but if you've already done that work and you know what your product is and it addresses that pain point, have you ever looked into XYZ? And the more questions you ask, eventually they'll ask you, if they haven't already, what do you do? Then you say, in what you do, you tailor your answer to basically exactly what their pain point is. So if they say, my biggest pain point is we're not getting enough opportunities, we're not getting in front of the right people. And then they ask, what do you do? To be honest, that's exactly what we do. That's very interesting because we basically build out AI systems which help companies get in front of the right decision makers. And we specialize in the IT service approach. I wouldn't try to sell them. I'll just say, I'm not sure if you're the right fit, but I'd love to ask you a few more questions. The more questions you ask, if it starts lining up and ticking your boxes, then that's when you start saying, that's really interesting. We know how to solve that. We can do that. And then at the very end of the call, or at the very end of that speech with them, normally what we would do is, look, I don't want to be selling you anything, but if we could solve this pain point, which I know you were mentioning is causing you a lot of issues, it's actually losing you around X amount, how much is it losing you per month? Then would you be interested in a call? 9 times out of 10, they're always like, yeah, very curious actually. It's all about the way you frame yourself. It's about the perspective. But 9 times out of 10, if you can get it, then would you be opposed to a call? And that's when they would either give you their business card if they haven't already, or you just ask for their email, and you right then and there in the event, you pull up your phone, you get your calendar app out, you click on the date that you've agreed upon. So next Wednesday at 3 p.m, for example, does that work for you? Or does this week at Friday work for you? You find the exact time and date that they have said, and make sure you go into your calendar, click on that exact time, and type in their exact email address right in front of them. So you ask for their email address. If they've given you a business card with their email address, you type that email address onto that card and say, I've just sent over the invite. Looking forward to seeing you on the call then. And then that's the perfect segue. You found out what their biggest pain points are. You've done the discovery call. You've qualified them. And this is all in person. And then you have booked a call. That should be anywhere between a 5 to 15 minute conversation. It could go longer than that. But that has worked so well for us because the person actually sees us face to face. There's nothing better than doing interactions face to face. It's better than Zoom. You can get the subtle nuances of their voice, body posture, all of that. I started doing this before I had any sales experience. This was from the very beginning. This was super efficient because cold email takes a few days to start warming up. You could literally go to an event tomorrow, if there's one in your local city, and do this exact 3-stage approach. First, go to an event, find the people in the stalls or people who are walking around, ask them questions at stage 3, and then stage 4, book the call right then and there. There's nothing more frustrating than once you've finished the event, you've got people saying random dates, you can't remember who's who, and then you're mixing up people. Just do it then and there. It's so much more efficient. Then on the way back, you can count up how many meetings you've got. We were getting around anywhere between 15, actually once we got 25, I think 27 in one event. So this is the golden nugget for if you're just starting out and trying to sell AI services. Now, I haven't seen anyone talking about this because it requires a little bit of upfront charisma. It's a little bit daunting for the first few people. Just completely fall into having a normal conversation with somebody. Don't try to sell anything. Just try to understand what their pain points are. Don't speak at all about yourself. Just speak about their company. What's their company's biggest pain points? If they ask, you can start talking a little bit about yourself, and that's when you book the meeting. Try to be as casual as possible. At the end of every interaction, always ask to book a call. Even if you didn't have that great a connection, even if you get rejected, always ask to book a call. You never know what will happen. Worst case scenario, they'll say, sorry, we're not interested, and you move on to the next person. Now that moves on to the second part about the event method. So event method, actually, because there are people in stalls and there are people walking around, they're probably around, I don't know, anywhere, depending on the event, between 20 to 200 stalls. So you've got between 20 to 200 businesses in your ideal customer profile. Some of them may be massive enterprise companies who you wouldn't bother touching, but our ideal range was around between 10 to 50 employees. We found tons of companies like that, and normally the key decision makers would be at that event. They would be either at the stall or a secondary decision maker. Always I'd recommend reaching out to the CEOs or anyone of decision making authority, so executives, etc. Now, that was stage 1 of this event method. The second part was the walkers, and they are a little bit more difficult. However, if you have gained a little bit of backing from good interactions with people in stalls, because they're obliged to speak to you to sell their services. Once you've gained a little bit of experience with them, then you go into start speaking to people who you think just seem interesting walking around. And normally you can sort of tell who's there for business events because they're dressed smart. You can tell people who's just there for finding out a little bit more. So you can meet all different people in different stores. Just be like, oh, I love XYZ. Interesting, the bag you're carrying around. I'm curious what you're doing here. I see your badge. It's for this company. I've heard about them before. And that's when you start speaking to them. And then you would do the exact same script. What do you do? What's your biggest pain points? But don't act like you're trying to sell anything to them. You just act like you're having a normal conversation. How are you finding this event? What's your core reason to be at this event? There's so many questions you can ask, and if you want, you can just plug into ChatGPT before going to an event. Give me 20, I'm going to this event, give me 20 questions I can ask someone to find out more about their business and something that shows that I know industry knowledge. That's just a simple prompt you can put in. Now, normally what we would do, we would probably get from the people walking around, they're probably the best clients to get because they're people looking to better their own business, not to sell anything. So normally we can get around 80% from the stalls and 20% from the people walking around. But normally the people walking around have converted higher. So most of our people have converted from the random people we started speaking to, which I don't see anyone talking about. It's something called the interview method for short form content on LinkedIn. You can see on my old LinkedIn. We would say we're recording videos for LinkedIn just about industry experts. Would love to ask you a few questions. And then most people would love that interaction. And you just ask them a bunch of questions about their industry, exactly what you'd do to the stall basically, but act as if it's like a interview conversation for LinkedIn, etc. And they will start speaking about whatever they want and feel valued because you're asking them questions and it's going to go on social media. They feel like they can promote their brand, etc. So win-win, I would say. And then after the camera shuts off, normally they ask, what do you actually do? I'm very curious. You seem like really intelligent about certain topics. And then you would do, and then you would relate it if their pain points that you discovered relate to you. Actually, we solve a very similar field of problem about opportunity generation in the cybersecurity industry, for example. Normally, 9 times out of 10, that's how we book so many calls from the people walking around. So this was a absolute hidden gem, which I don't see anyone talking about. That is the event method mixed with a little bit of event interview method. Now, that is event method number 1. That's the first method we spoke about. Now, that is by far the quickest, easiest, and most effective way, I would say, to get your first few clients, first few meetings as an AI service business. Then next is a little bit more, it depends your network. If you've got no network, this could be a little bit more difficult, but it's just about referrals. If you've never done any work before, don't worry, this referral method is a simple script. If you're connected to any friends whose parents may be successful, use interesting businesses, or know someone in their network who would be interested in having a conversation, what we did was a bunch of referral calls. So basically, anybody I knew in my network who was at all related to business, I would message them out of the blue saying, I'm starting a new business. I'm just very curious to learn a little bit about your operations. I know you're successful in so-and-so field, and there'll be no better person to speak to. Then you would set up a call, and because you know these people, it's very easy to make this introduction, ask all the questions, and don't talk at all about yourself. You'd use similar principles, but you talk about stuff like, what does your business do? What's the biggest pain points? If there was something that could be solved, what would you recommend looking into? Is there any areas you'd recommend me looking into? That's the referral method. So getting on calls with people who are in your network or in your friends' networks, you don't want to try to sell anything to them. You just want to learn as much as possible. Normally what happens from this is they would ask, what are you doing nowadays? And then you'd give them a little spiel about, if it's related to their pain point, you could say, I'd love to approach this problem, see what I can tackle, see if there's anything that can be done from there. And then that's exactly how we start doing some work for them. With this method and every other method, the way we assigned our clients was providing value for free. This may be a bit painful if you've never done it before, but give them some kind of free value, something that will take you a few hours, but will be super worth it to them. That opens up the door for monetization or referral. Set up some calls with people you know or people in your friends' networks and do some work for them for free. And then you also learn about their business because it's a much more informal setting. Our third method is through cold email. I know the cold email space is completely saturated. I said in the beginning, everybody's talking about cold email, but this approach, I don't see anybody really talking about in cold email, which is called the interview method. And this works perfectly if you're just starting out. So we have the event method, referral method, and this is the interview method. This works perfectly if you're starting out. And what it basically asks you to do is send a bunch of cold emails to top decision makers you would find on a site called Apollo. It has a massive database, and then you would use Apify to scrape it. Then you would use Clay to create hyper-personalized emails, and then you would use Smart Lead to send those emails out to those thousands of people. And then before that, you actually need to buy loads of domains. Depends on how big you want to scale, but never use your primary domain. You'd buy them from GoDaddy, for example, and you'd set up Gmail / Microsoft inboxes. This is the approach. This is just a quick overview. If you want to see more, check out that video. From this email, you don't want to be selling any services at all. The script I used was hi name, and then you would do a little bit of hyper-personalization. So this is where Clay, Smart Lead, watch that video to send AI hyper-personalized emails. Then you'd send something along the lines of, hey name, then insert interesting thing about your company. Saw your recent initiative on XYZ, loved what you're doing there. Very curious about that space. Conducting a white paper with industry leaders. And I'd love to interview yourself due to your work on XYZ. And then you would say the white paper's name would be something like how AI is changing the cybersecurity industry. I'd brainstorm with ChatGPT what's best, but something which is going to be extremely interesting to that person and demographic. Then you would say, would love your feedback. Is there any chance I could get 15, 30 minutes of your time? It'll be super informal. If we would send out 1,000 emails to 1,000 different decision makers, we would get, on average, a 4% reply rate. So 4% reply rate is really high for just cold emails. We'd get like a 4% positive reply rate. So out of would be 40 meetings. Now, 40 meetings of speaking with decision makers about what their biggest pain points are, understanding industry expertise. This allows you to speak to much larger company decision makers. So like anywhere between 200 employees, it could be 1,000 employees, because email is the perfect place to reach them. So that allows you to get your foot in the door. So first of all, with the interview method, once one of the meetings have been booked, you schedule it in and you conduct a discovery call. On that discovery call, that's when you ask all of those questions. What's your biggest pain points? Is there anything that, if I could solve, would be of extreme value? When you diagnose their pain points, go into talking about, so if this could be solved, how much would that actually be worth to you? Is there monetary value? And then they would say maybe like, oh, if we could get 100 opportunities per month, we would have a 70% close rate. So we would have 70 new deals closed per month, and that would equate to around 1.5 million in overall revenue. Helpful for us. And that's the kind of numbers you want to be finding. So key things on this call, like what their biggest pain points are, and then of course relate it to whatever your white paper is, like AI in cybersecurity. So in the very beginning of the call, if they ask what do, you can give a very, very vague answer and just say, we're an AI company looking in the cybersecurity industry, but to be honest, we're just here to find out as much information about different companies for our white paper we're conducting to get market research. You can say, before I publish it, I'll give you all the notes, etc. That could be a really interesting touch point if they don't actually go through with you. Then you'd do, after you've done the discovery call, it feels awkward, but what you would have to do is say, thank you so much for your time, really appreciate it. And in the last minute or two of the call, you would then reveal that your pain points really resonate with me. As you mentioned about you getting opportunities, that's something which I've been building out a system for a client and we were able to do XYZ, change them. Would you be interested in having another call to solve this issue or find out what we do? I'll give you a little 2-pager. We can walk through exactly the notes we covered on this call, but also a little bit about ourselves. And if you pitch it in the right way, there's an outstanding way of everybody saying yes. Normally we would get 90% of people saying yes and booking the next call. This allows you to get your foot in the door with these big companies, understand all their pain points, and then customize your 2-pager or a little bit like a company profile specifically to everything they've said. And once you've found, then you've got your foot in the door with a big company, I would recommend providing, they can see your expertise. For example, if it would be an automation, a free automation, if it would be some kind of AI service system that you can code out or build quickly, something to show that whatever they just mentioned would be super useful if they found out a bit more. Then you would show them the free value, give it a little bit more information, conduct any questions that you didn't quite cover that allows you to go into any questions you didn't get into. So for example, Something I normally like to find out is what are their profit margins. And now this is something which you wouldn't typically want to ask on like a white paper call, because they'll be like, why are you asking those kinds of questions? But here is perfect, because then you can actually find that kind of information out. So these are the 3 different sections. They all in turn are very similar in the way you approach it. You never talk about yourself. If you have any takeaways from this video, the way is you want to do a way of selling called consultative sales. You don't want to be speaking about yourself too much. You want to be speaking about them, what their biggest pain points are. Once you understand what those biggest pain points are, only then you would adjust your value proposition towards those pain points, and then you would book a call. And then on that call, you provide some kind of free value. After that free value, then of course they can see what you're capable of, and that's when you can start going into some kind of deal or project together. And if it's your first client, I wouldn't recommend starting too big. Just start to get your foot in the door. Now, this is different to what the AI gurus on the internet are talking about, because they've got a large audience. The niche is saturated. Loads of people are doing the exact same thing. So maybe in a few years, if this video gets really big, I will have come out with something else so you can stay on top of it. But this is what's worked for us in the last year. So we started in the beginning of 2025 with these methods, and we were able to get so many clients through so many meetings booked on average. And most important part is you can do this from literally day one. You could do it from today about your business. You don't need to wait for cold emails to warm up for 2 weeks. You don't need to wait for meetings to be booked. You can go out there right now, find an event, and start speaking to business leaders. So if that's of any value to you, please leave a comment. Let me know if there's anything else you'd like to see. This is what's worked for us. I'm just saying this from a personal experience, speaking to myself about 1 year ago about this space. If that was of any value, then check out the newsletter in the description, which goes through some more technical approaches to building out AI service systems. Thank you so much. Hope that was of any value, and see you in the next video.